you all for coming. I'm James Nasita, Commission President. I'm substituting tonight for our Mayor Doug Nealer, who is out of town traveling for the next couple of days. And why don't we just call the roll?
Commissioner Roth.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Nasita.
Here.
And Commissioner Mum.
Here.
Great, thank you. So we have a very busy agenda tonight, and we have a first on the work session is future agenda items. Does anybody on the commission have suggestions for future agenda items tonight?
May I do something first?
Sure.
I guess I need to declare that I have my cell phone here, and I'm waiting for a call from the airport, so I will have to leave.
Okay.
But it's not for communication other than that.
Okay, then let's get right into discussion items. Item number 3A is a presentation by Growth Design Corporation. We'd like to welcome you and representative from Concordia College also. We understand you've traveled from out of town, and welcome to Oregon City.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And wanted to really start by talking a little bit about why we're here, which is really that Concordia College.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, I'm Bill Lucher from Growth Design Corporation.
Thank you. And we know Denny Steckman from previous visits.
Good. Concordia University has been a long-time client of Growth Design Corporation. Our company was started in 1981. We really our focus is really in the area of resource solutions. We've worked with a variety of different kinds of clients, different classes of trade, from colleges, universities, healthcare systems, social service organizations, Goodwills throughout the United States. And in the past few years have focused more in the area of renewable energy as a emerging resource solution, both for our clients and also for us as a business, starting our own for-profit division, the Growth Design Energy Development Group, which is more involved with really how you take renewable energy technologies, integrate them to turn into sustainable business models. So really, we were invited after the conversation between Oregon City and Concordia University by Concordia just to look at this project to see if there was a way to integrate renewable energy solutions into an overall development project. We have therefore come out here to take a look at the site, work a little more closely with Concordia in discussion, and from what we've seen, we like what we see. We think that it's an opportunity to, with this Cove site, to entertain other options in terms of how you might envision or have a vision for the use of that land. So let me just sort of run through here. This is our take on renewable energy. We're not a technology company, we're a solutions company. You have a wonderful array of renewable energy technologies available to you now in this country. The issue is always, what's the business model that makes it sustainable, that makes it work without subsidies? And that's really has been our starting point in our view of these renewable energy technologies. It has to make business sense. Subsidies aren't going to be there forever. It's just the new world of really of energy. That anything that you're going to be developing really has to have its own a business model that works. Part of other learning was that when you start to integrate different renewable energy technologies, there's a synergy that can emerge that gives each of the individual technologies a stronger business model. And that's really sort of been our starting point. Really with Concordia, I think the idea of that was really offered to them as this potential site was intriguing to us, both from the perspective of how might we integrate a renewable energy campus as part of this development, and how might we help to reduce the overall carbon footprint of any sort of development that might go on there. And that's really been sort of our starting point in these discussions. If Denny wanted to maybe say a few words about Concordia's thoughts on the site and.
Well, basically, we've talked a little bit before that we have several new programs that we need to roll out to some location they won't fit in Northeast Portland anymore. We're pretty much filled up there. And we're looking at programs that can be self-sustained in a city where they don't necessarily need to be directly connected. Students don't need to be directly connected back to the home campus in Portland. And so that's what really kind of generated all of this conversation. We actually just cut the ribbon last week on a project that we did similar to this in Boise, Idaho, where we started a law school there right in downtown Boise. Same kind of concept that we've developed in Northeast Portland, same kind of concept we're trying to develop here in Oregon City. So that's how it started. We always look for ways in which we can be a catalyst, and we can always add more value than what we can bring to the equation. That's why we've engaged in dealing with growth design. That's why there may be other potential partners that could fit into this thing. So we're just really trying to find out where you can garner the greatest value, total value, in a project like this.
And that's really been sort of our starting point also. As I say, we would be at a very preliminary stage in looking at this. But I had a chance to sort of walk off the site today, look it over. And clearly there are areas, I think, of the site down toward the water reclamation part of that development that would be very suitable for us to site different types of renewable energy technologies. We have a criteria around the technologies we've chosen. One, they have to be scalable, so we're not talking about building the Taj Mahal every time we talk about a renewable energy project. They also have to have, as I say, a sustainable business model associated with them. Clearly here in the Northwest, you are blessed with fairly inexpensive electricity. Your natural gas, I think this year rates are coming down a little bit. So you do have a fairly stable energy environment in which to develop. I think what we are interested in is how we can, in a sense, complement a development by not necessarily being able to provide a complete power for a whole development, but how we could, at least portion of that power could come from renewable sources. And at the same time, look at how we can, by doing so with the sequestration of carbon, how we can reduce the carbon impact or the carbon footprint of any development that might go on there. And that has us intrigued. We see these as really as economic multiplier. We don't mind paying taxes. We think enterprise is good. We like the idea of being able to create green jobs. These technologies are environmentally neutral. Again, that's one of our criteria. They have very little environmental impact. I think what we might be looking at this Cove site might be a combination of at least some sort of biomass type of renewable energy source for the site.
When you say biomass, what do you mean specifically?
We might be looking at some sort of a biodigester that would be able to use byproducts from food processing, other types of organic materials that are readily available in the Portland area. Again, we're not talking about a very large project. We're talking about something maybe again, it would depend on how this all would pencil out, but maybe something in the 1 to 2 megawatt range. And when I say that, we also have, in Europe, you have what's called district sort of approach to heating power. We could conceivably adapt something like that to this situation where we wouldn't necessarily have to be generating electricity. We could be generating actually a biogas that we could scrub and use for heating. And interestingly, the nice thing about a lot of these renewable energy technologies, something like wind or solar, when you actually look at them, they're only about 28% maybe efficient. There's a lot that they don't do. We've tried to look at technologies where we're able to really use, for example, in the case of a biodigester, if you're generating electricity, there are BTUs associated with the generation of the electricity from your actual turbines. You can recycle all that. You can use all that energy, all those BTUs, in a project. So I think that's what we might be looking at early on. I think the other thing, I've sort of, looking at this site, we sort of would, with having the water reclamation plant there, in terms of any sort of a biodigester, that immediately, we would be one of your customers for any of the effluent that would need to be processed from the biodigester. It could go very easily into your water reclamation plant. The other thing that we like to look at is perhaps even a biodiesel facility of some sort, production facility. Again, all these technologies we look at, we're talking no more than several acres associated with each. So a technology that we've chosen for, say, biodiesel would require for the 3 to 10 million gallon capacity plant, around 5 acres. That's all. This is second generation technology that we'd be using. The digester, without the need for any sort of storage of effluent, you're talking about 1.5 acres. So all these could be very easily sited, fit in, so that it would not interfere, I know, with the overall master plan you have in terms of access to the river trees. A lot of these can be, as I say, it's very easy to scale these and to adapt them to sites.
Can you explain, on your graphic here, you have the black crosshatch marks. What are you trying to convey with that?
That was just an example of where, as we were sort of looking at the site map before I had a chance to walk it off, if we were going to look at locations, initial locations for some of these technologies, that just seemed to be a spot that we could start with. But as I say, it has. This is for illustration purposes only. I think as we would develop a master plan for this, would really is how we would then end up siting in partnership with the city in terms of your goals for the use of that land.
Have you? It's the county that owns the water plant, the water treatment plant.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been in discussions with the county?
No, we have not.
Okay.
Yet. No, we have not. As I say, we're in early on this, and I thought it was important to come out and just sort of talk through our potential interest in this as and as I say, with Concordia.
So,
Yep.
can I ask a question?
Sure, please.
So, can you kind of explain to me what it is in kind of detail you're going to take, like, for the biomass?
Yes.
Exactly how does that work?
In Vacuview would be this would be a biodigester, biogas facility in Switzerland. You would have a variety of different feedstocks available for a biodigester. All biodigesters like a little manure.
Right.
You need some bugs. But that dry mass into a digester that we're looking at would be maybe about 10% of what would go in would need to be of a dry manure nature. The rest of it could be things like waste from distilleries, breweries, food processing. Any liquid organic waste could be utilized.
And then you like put it in a bucket kind of thing, and
Yeah, it's interesting.
Heat it up
No matter what it's interesting in this renewable energy area. It is the homogeneity of your feedstock.
yeah.
That is the important thing in terms of providing baseload power. In this case, we would be taking whatever materials we're using. We'd probably look to be using primarily liquid organic waste. But there would be some sort of, I would say, pre-processing that we would be doing to ensure the homogeneity going in, so we know consistently what's going into the biodigester.
Okay.
That's critical. The recipe is critical, both in terms of the performance guarantee you have with the technology, as well as being able to characterize any sort of emissions that might be associated with it or whatever. But again, we're really talking about organic
Yeah.
types of waste, nothing toxic.
Right.
And at the end of a digester process, the pathogens have all been removed. So it can be used as a fiber, artificial peat moss. And if we were in a rural area, we would actually try to be capturing this effluent as a liquid fertilizer.
Okay. Could I just ask staff for a second, one question? Can you guys tell me if there's something in the charter that prevents anything like this from happening?
I think the language in the charter is trash burning facility.
Oh, okay.
And there is no incineration in this process. This is a bioenzyme type
Okay.
stuff.
Exactly. yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Thank
found we have found that this again, the technology we've chosen of avoid incineration, which has been
Right.
a
Okay,
a
good.
dead end for most
That's good.
municipalities in this
'Cause
country.
that'd be having to go to a vote of the people.
Yeah. No, again, what we try to do is look at technologies that, again, are scalable, have very little environmental impact in
That's
their
great.
operation.
Thank you.
This other slide is our prototype of a facility in Iowa that we're going to be under construction. And this is actually a biodiesel refinery. This is so out of the, I mean, there's an education process around these new technologies because people are so used to thinking about these 25-acre sites for either ethanol or
So
bio.
this is all up and running and
This is
producing and all that?
the technology that we're using here has been running for the past 2 years in
Great.
Minnesota, and it actually operates without a permit, without the need for a permit from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency.
Mm-hmm.
The emissions are
Because
so,
of the lack or relative lack of emissions.
there are no emissions associated. They're negligible.
Is this the one that you're showing in this sketch? Is that the Eisenman process? Because I read on your
No.
website something called the Magayan process.
This is the Magayan process.
Okay.
This is
And how
this-
does that differ from the Eisenman process?
Eisenman is actually one of the leading companies, German company, in the area of many different industrial pollution technologies. They're probably one of the leaders in the world. That also happen to have a strong biogas component. They have about 70 of these in Europe of these installations. This is the biodigester. This would be the biodiesel facility, and really the largest part of this facility would be really a small tank farm. This is the Magayan process is unique in that it is not. There's actually no waste byproducts. Does not use any water, and it's really quite remarkable. And we like it because again it's scalable. It's modular. This next photo, if you see the folding chair sort of in back of it, that gives you an idea of how small this is.
Now, when it's a reactor, how does this work?
This works. The other interesting thing about the Magayan process, it can use over 30 different kinds of feedstocks that can all be mixed into the same tank. If you're aware of traditional biodiesel, you have to have one tank that holds one type of feedstock. So it's either soy oil, corn oil, or something else. Magayan process is different in that it doesn't matter. You don't need to remove what's called the free fatty acids from the feedstocks. This gets technical. It's a lipid. We're all lipids. We all have fat. The nice thing about the Magayan process is it doesn't care what kind of fat it is. Therefore, it is a very efficient process when it comes to the use of multiple feedstocks to produce the biodiesel. What you're looking at, is a reactor that actually would be upright. And in that is a metallic catalyst. And the feedstocks, the waste oils, could be McDonald's oils, it could be, you name it, you could use it, are put through this reactor under some pressure, about the same pressure as you'd have from a paintball gun, and about maybe about 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's a continuous process. You would also combine under that heat methanol or ethanol with the feedstock to produce the biodiesel. And it's a very simple, very elegant process. We liked it. I mean, again, it's a very breakthrough in terms of when you think of traditional biodiesel.
And like the Eisenman process, which you mentioned was not combustion or incineration or anything like that, this similarly is a kind of like a catalytic
That's correct.
process, but not.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I think I read that your catalyst is embedded, so it doesn't need to be renewed constantly. And what is the catalyst?
It's a zirconia metallic. It's a metallic oxide catalyst. Imagine lots of little small granular balls inside this tube. The discovery of this was actually serendipitous. This is actually a well-known technology in the area of gas chromatography for the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay.
And a very bright senior at college in Minnesota thought, well, are there other ways of producing biodiesel? And through the 6 degrees of separation, we're able to get with the people who made reactors that were about so big for gas chromatography for the pharmaceutical industry, and they were able to, it turns out that it works even better in biodiesel refining. So that's really what's in there. It's a metallic oxide. And so if this becomes clogged, you literally unscrew the ends of the caps, empty out the catalyst, and bake the catalyst to get the contaminant off, then put it back into the tube and screw it back in.
So are you using, like with the gas chromatography, you use gases?
It goes under pressure. The idea here would be that under a combination of heat and pressure, you're pushing a liquid feedstock through, and the chemical reaction that then goes on with this metallic oxide catalyst produces the biodiesel. But the catalyst literally lasts forever. And if we wanted to scale up, you just add modules. So as we design these plants, we design them with the idea that at some point we'll be expanding. We would start with 3, but we would design it so that we would go to about 10 million gallons, which seems to be the sweet spot. After that, other things come into play in terms of how you would site and size it.
So you say this McGuyan process is not dependent on the water being nearby?
It doesn't. It uses. We determined that it uses about. We would, in rural areas, we need a septic tank about the size of a family home to process any of the wastewater, and that's mostly from the.
So this one could be sited anywhere?
Pretty much. Pretty much. The other part to this, why we sort of like the southern end of near the water reclamation, is that you would have truck traffic associated with bringing in feedstocks, taking out but this is for about a 2 million gallon, for a 2 megawatt biodigester. You're probably talking about maybe 8 tankers a day of materials. If you co-located this with the biodiesel, you might be talking about another 4 or 5 trucks a day of tankers.
Like 1 an hour.
Yeah, pretty much. And but again, in our model, what you find is if you co-locate a biodigester with the biodiesel, you have a synergy between the utility costs associated with the operation of the biodiesel, which makes it even a stronger model, business model. So that's the way we've approached this renewable energy area. We like it from an enterprise standpoint. We like the idea that what's critical is that you really have to understand what your feedstocks are in a particular area. We can size our technology to fit that feedstock supply.
How many employees would something like this?
A digester of about 2 megawatt would be about 6 to 8 employees. That is that would probably be about right for that size. With the McGuyan biodiesel, 3 million gallon plant, we'd be about 18 employees. We'd be running on a continuous basis, 3 shifts. If we were to expand it to 10 million, we'd probably add about another 10 to that. These are all as I say, these are all really cutting edge technologies, so that they're not your traditional, well, we're going to build the ethanol plant or something that's going to be 100 people. No, these are all very efficient. So the jobs associated with them are going to be these are going to be high-paying, high-skilled jobs. So yeah.
What other cities have you done this in?
We have right now. We have on the drawing board projects in Seward, Nebraska. We have a project in Mount Valley, Iowa. We have projects in outside of Naples, Florida. That we're all in the planning stage to get going on. Each of these are a little different. Mm-hmm. It's a little different mix of technologies. Again, depending on what the feedstock supply is going to be.
Right.
In Florida, we might be actually looking at a gasifier. Gasifier technology is not a combustion technology. You're charring materials to produce a gas that produces electricity. Mm-hmm. So again, that's probably the closest we would have to something that where we're actually heating something but we're not burning it.
Right.
We're charring it.
Do you know of any other companies that have put this into a city anywhere?
It's a good question. There are instances of where you would have biodigesters in some urban areas. I mean, a good example would be actually Des Moines, Iowa. Mm-hmm. As part of their water reclamation system, they actually have a very large biodigester that goes with that. we really don't know of any instances, which is kind of where we think we have a little advantage, that
Sure.
where we've done the business models around how you integrate these things to make them work. And as I say, I mean, it is, and from a business perspective, would you ever want to have a complete site powered by renewable energy? Well, I don't know. It depends on how it pencil out. But could we have a distinct impact on reducing the overall carbon footprint of a project? Yeah, we sure could in terms of
Yeah.
the carbon sequestration, carbon
Sure.
credits, and maybe supply a good proportion of the heat, power, whatever, to a site
Sure.
that would be renewable.
Thank you.
Is this the extent of the slides, or do you have some
Yep,
more?
that's really, as I say, I mean, I think we're at a point really with Concordia that we're here to think this is an exciting project. This probably would be one of the first urban models in the country where, at least in the United States, where we would be looking to integrate these technologies in this way. So, yeah.
And you were talking about the Cove. Did you look at other property in Oregon City also?
I think a colleague of mine has, I mean, this is something we could do in other locations.
Yeah, yeah.
Our focus was really, in terms of the conversation we've had with Concordia, on to take a look at this particular site and just sort of think through with them what are the possibilities.
Sure.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I have a couple more. So, transportation, big trucks and that kind of thing won't be that big of a deal. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. I mean,
Okay.
what you currently have associated with the water reclamation plant down there, this is not going to be any.
Because we also have another development slated for that Cove area, which would have vehicles like cars and residential and that kind of thing.
I think as I say, I mean, I think we just have to pencil out I mean, we'd have to
Sure.
get the master plan and just see
Sure.
how the impact. But as I say, as it turns out, the truck traffic is not onerous in relation to what we would be, size of the projects we'd be looking at.
And has anybody from Concordia talked with the other developing group to kind of see how they could kind of marry together and be one?
At this point, our conversations have pretty much been with Growth Design. I mean,
Okay.
our approach is, we understand there's a whole lot of complexities involved in
Sure.
this thing. And so, our approach is that we don't necessarily intend to kind of try to break down all of those complexities. Somebody else is going to have to do that.
Oh, okay.
And so, our intent is to try to help form a group of partners, whoever and however many there need to be, in order to make this whole thing work. Because
So-
as Bill said, we think there's feasibility here. We need to prove that to ourselves.
Yeah.
Right, right. So you would be looking to the city to spearhead that is kind of what you're thinking? Is that kind of?
Whoever's good at, busting through
Yeah.
brick walls, that would be fine.
Okay. And then you guys do know that's in the floodplain, right? So your equipment and all that's fine with getting wet and all that.
Yeah, we're-
Just want to make sure that you do that.
Well, I think we would, yeah, I mean, that's, we have, in most of our projects, we'd be, creating berms and stuff around, for some, not only just sort of contain, if there ever was any sort of spillage on the biodiesel, that would be contained by the berm, but at the same time would also provide some protection in terms of flooding, so.
I'm
we're-
sure there's lots of codes and everything else that you'd have to jump through.
Sure.
All the hoops.
And in terms of the permit. The other nice thing about these technologies, though, is that they can go up very quickly. To do a 3 million gallon biodiesel refinery there on that site would only take us about 9 months.
I see. Okay.
The biggest lead time would really be around how we would size tanks in terms of ordering those up. But everything else is very, as I say, it's very compact and very, very efficient, very elegant design. Same with the biodigesters. This is all prefabbed in Germany.
Sure.
And
I
so
think it's
they go up quickly.
great.
So,
I think it's great. And so I guess Concordia, I got to kind of figure this out. So Concordia is going to kind of be a part of this, and they're going to bring in this partner. And then I guess you guys are you looking at buying property at the Cove? Are you looking at, I'm trying to figure out kind of where it's going to go next steps.
I don't know, we,
As are we.
yeah, I don't know that we could give you an exact answer about that. I think what we're looking at is between Growth Design and Concordia University and whoever else may be an appropriate partner or partners to bring into this, we need to figure out what makes the most sense for us and for the city of Oregon City.
Sure.
That's really
Absolutely.
what it boils down to. And that could form a whole variety of different structures that I can imagine.
But you don't think Concordia School is going to build anything there? It's probably going to be a biodiesel mass kind of
Well, I
thing?
think
Is kind of what we're looking at? Is that kind of
Well,
the plan?
can I bring up something here?
Yeah, sure.
2 points. First, I'm looking at maybe, would a community work group be something that would be valuable in this process, in trying to streamline through whatever city processes we had to go through, and working with you to figure those out, and working with the city to figure those out?
I would think so,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. And then secondly, the Homeland Security part, can I bring that in?
Sure.
Okay. Where does that fit into this whole thing? And a third question would be, what overall acreage are you looking at right now for startup and a little bit of expansion?
And why don't you, Denny, give us background on what the Homeland Security thing is?
Sure. As I mentioned, there are 4 academic programs that we need to find a home for. And they're basically a Homeland Security program, a pharmacology program, occupational physical therapy, and then we're also looking at a site to do our business program that deals with the rapid prototyping concept. So those are the pieces, or the major pieces. The largest one of which is Homeland Security, which there is no program like that on the West Coast. We've done a significant amount of research in terms of what that would require. I mean, we were estimating that it could, to put all those four programs on an Oregon City site may involve as much as 200,000 square feet of space, and actually we have even some conceptual ideas of what that may look like.
Sure.
In fact, I think we have some with us tonight. But that's really what it involves. The Homeland Security program is really one in which would probably provide the greatest impact, I think, to the city, because we're looking at a training facility. It was both an academic program, a degree program at undergraduate, graduate level, as well as a training facility, which could accommodate about 300 people. And we're looking at a facility that would probably do that maybe 30 to 40 weeks out of the year. So it's a fairly aggressive program, but I think it's one in which every indication we have right now is that it has a good deal of viability to it. And pharmacology and occupational physical therapy are both programs that have high demand, high need, very few providers. And again, we think it's a good mix. It'd be a good demand, and it would also add a significant employment base to that particular site. And then we've also talked, I think, with the commission before about the rapid prototyping. That's somewhat more boutique, but I think it really builds in and addresses sort of the entrepreneurial spirit that needs some place to go and to develop. And so, again, I think we put all these things together. What we're really trying to do is say, where can we become part of a catalyst to a much broader project? And that's why we're saying we can't do it all by ourselves.
Oh,
that's
sure.
why we brought in Growth Design, and we'll probably look at bringing in other partners who have the similar interest. I mean, our mission and their mission is pretty much the same. So.
Yeah, as we first conceived these, we really call these Centers for Environmental Stewardship,
Sure.
our campuses. And we're, from our perspective, given our background, our mission as a company, we like the idea of stewardship. And we see also the potential around educational programs. I mean, these sites will lend themselves very easily to visitors
Oh, yeah.
who could view firsthand
Yeah.
new technologies. We've also talked, and from our perspective also, we've been talking about there's opportunity to create new curriculums
Right.
in the area of
Right.
renewable energy. As I say, the technology is easy. The business plans,
That's the tough one, isn't it?
that's
the tough
the
one.
learnings for people.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of two things that you're trying to accomplish then. So I guess what's the next step for the Homeland Security and the other kind of,
Well, the curriculum that we're actually going to be, we'll be offering classes right after the first of the year, both on ground and online. And that kind of will be our first foray to determine the scope and the breadth of the demand. But I think
I would
early-
imagine it'd be pretty high.
I would think so. Then I think the next step is that Bill and I have to figure out how do we make this work so that we both don't get fired because
That's important to keep your jobs.
But the good news for us would be that as we would start to do our financial modeling around it, we would have a built-in customer for some of that power we'd be creating.
Right. Right.
So we're not, again, where the renewable energy falls down sometimes is really where it's really reliant upon the power purchase agreement they get with the utility.
Sure.
Because
sure.
those are often just not going to be enough to make it a sustainable project. So where we can anchor or partner with industrial users, educational use, whatever,
Yeah.
that helps our modeling.
I would imagine so. So the other thing is, that area at the Cove is in the Urban Renewal District. So is that something that you might want to partner with, is the Urban Renewal Agency, as far as helping funding?
Helping funding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'd need
mean-
to talk about that. Yeah.
Provide bonds to be sold to,
I think our
Yeah.
communications prior was that they were not seeking urban renewal subsidies.
We would not be.
Yeah, I think your point was
No,
that
this has to stand on its own legs.
That's right.
Or
So
else it's not- you
the
can't do
urban
it.
renewal district would benefit from your project because it would create higher property values with industrial use,
and taxes.
but not
Yeah,
but
taxes,
not on the
fees.
other hand asking for the subsidy that other projects have been asking for.
Yeah.
So that's a really
Which
attractive.
is not to say that we would not try and take advantage of, say, federal grants, programs in renewable
right.
energy, but in the long, those get you started, but they don't keep you going.
Right. Well, that's why I thought about the Urban
Yeah.
Renewal Agency,
Yeah.
because that does help get you started on your projects, and that's kind of what it's set there for.
I think, as I say, this is such a premature. We would look at we look at everything
Absolutely.
in terms of how we do our capitalization.
As well you
strategies.
should,
Yeah,
being
so
a good business
we've
person.
learned.
Yeah, yeah.
We've learned.
Absolutely.
Can
So,
I go back to one question that I
Yeah.
your portion of it. What would you be looking at for a footprint?
I don't know.
Because I saw you said
Yeah.
1.5 acres here, and
Yeah, I think if we just did these two technologies, and we didn't depend on what sort of load we would want for, say, the biodigester, having the water reclamation plant right there, even if we went up to a 2.5, 3 megawatt digester, we could still site that within 2 acres.
okay,
It's really ingress egress in terms of trucks and how we'd want to have enough room to maneuver things. And on the biodiesel side, I think we would again no more than 5 acres for a 10 million gallon plant. That's plenty. You're looking at about a 4,500 square foot building for a 3 million gallon biodiesel plant,
sure.
which is pretty remarkable.
It is, very much so. And so what about the Concordia, the other part of that? What size land will you be looking for?
Well, I think what we were looking at initially was probably it would be about 10 to 11 acres, would be my guess, to support pretty much a sort of a campus of that size. And obviously we'd have to grow into it over a period of time.
Yeah. And then have you looked at other properties besides the Cove area too? I thought that we
We've
were
looked
pretty
at all
clear. Okay,
kinds
good.
of things,
Good.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and they all have stuff sticking to them.
Great.
Pluses and minuses.
Yes.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? I have a few. I could probably go on for longer than we have in this work session because this is really, really interesting to me, and I really thank you for, especially flying out from out of state for this conversation. But I'll just talk about a couple of big picture things. And I think the main big picture thing I want to point out is, I think one of the reasons I think that you're such a good match for Oregon City is because we've discussed here the fact that we're on the edge of the Portland metropolitan area, and we interface with a lot of agricultural area, out to Highway 213 down to the Willamette Valley, and we've talked about how we can use that strategic location for economic development. And basically, I mean, just in the past 6 months or so, a couple of things have emerged. One is kind of being a value-added food processing center for a lot of the smaller farms, in the vicinity, who don't particularly have specialized food processing facilities for them. Our farmers market director, for example, told me about dairy producers she knows that just don't have any place to process their dairy products. And I mean, given all that's grown, all the varieties of products we have in the area, I mean, it seems to me that the possibilities are just endless. And that's just in food production. I mean, what you're talking about just puts another dimension to all of this, as far as any food processing product is going to have some waste byproducts. I mean, be it corn husks or, oils or whatever. And to be able to develop another industry based on using those byproducts to generate, green power and jobs. It's great. I mean, it just sounds like a hand in a glove kind of fit.
What we're doing in Seward, Nebraska, is actually anchoring an industrial park that they have with renewable energy. So it'll be, and again, I mean, they're in a perfect location in Nebraska for food processing types of byproduct, agricultural waste. But again, the idea for us of being able to anchor economic development with renewable energy technologies that aren't, in a sense, it's not a forced marriage.
Yeah.
That in fact you do have business models that work and are sustainable without subsidies. That's been the key for us, both from our business development side, but also on our consulting side, because we still have to go back to a large client base and advise them on, well, what do we do about our renewable energy questions. So it's as I say, this is exciting for us.
Right.
We see great opportunity here.
Yeah. The point you just made, I kind of goes to the second point I wanted to make. The other thing that's really interesting to me is the taking green energy production and making it acceptable within the city, and the idea of district energy, et cetera, and being able to have Oregon City have an energy source for its own energy independence. And your mentioning of district energy was kind of key for that. When I first started on commission, I took a tour with one of the former councilors from Metro, Robert Liberty, who would take tours, lead planning officials and elected officials on tours of Vancouver, BC. And just the phenomenal stuff they do up there as far as mixed-use development, district energy, and it's just, I mean, it's really amazing. And if Oregon City could do anything close to that, it'd be tremendous. There was a district energy facility that we did tour, right adjacent to residential areas. I mean, our traditional view of zoning, where you separate all the uses in the last century, is way out of date. And one of the things we're confronting, especially with the mill closure, is how to rethink our paradigm as far as economic development and how zoning, is part of that. I mean, one of the things that we can help you with is, municipal tools like zoning. I've floated the ideas on work sessions before of trying to create, particularly for the mill site, a new kind of zoning animal that we don't have yet, which would allow some kind of light, industry, appropriately regulated, so that you could have jobs, family wage jobs and residences, so we could maintain some employment at the mill site with all the historic uses and all the other tourism development we want to. Having something like that on the Cove site too, I think would be interesting, or anywhere else. I mean, there are other places in the city we could do that, I think that's something that would because you're something that you're offering us a concrete example of that. It's something that we can actually grab onto and see how can we make that work here, and that's really, really interesting to me. The last thing I wanted to mention was that your timing is good as far as, I think you mentioned busting through walls, Danny. We just went through a national search for a new economic development director. First time we've done a national search since the position got created. And Eric Underwood, the new director, is going to be starting next week, I think, November 17th. And I would propose to our city manager that, what you guys are talking about scoping and developing the next and doing these explorations, be kind of like one of the first things on his plate, because I think what you guys are offering has a lot of promise and potential, and I think it's going to be really awesome to explore that. So with that,
One more question.
Sure.
Do you work with a company called Darling International?
The feedstock, sure, we know of them, yes.
Okay.
They're-
So do you use their waste product?
It depends on the region. Again, because we use scalable technologies, Darling is national company. We might use them in relation to biodiesel for some feedstocks, but around the rest of these feedstocks, we would not need to. We know the company and good company, but
I just think about sources.
yeah, remarkably, one thing that this country does very well is produce waste. And,
Yes, we do.
so, remarkably, at this point, the majority of that waste doesn't have a value associated with it. That will change. We are already in the new. The United States is just a little slow
Right.
to be in the new economy, but it's been here for 10 to 15 years in terms of the rest of the world, in terms of integration of renewable energy into the policy of different countries, many countries throughout the world. So I think that we would always be looking at where we could get waste at no cost, or simply because that qualifies you for a different class of carbon credit,
Right.
which has greater value in international markets. So there's all sorts of things about this new economy that can benefit municipalities, economic development, as well as private industry.
Yeah.
And that's the partnership that we
Oh, that brings up another. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It's fascinating. So, okay, so you guys produce this energy, then you sell it to PGE. Is that kind of
Our business model, there are
I don't know what it-
three key elements in renewable energy business model. One is your feedstock. What is it? Where is it? Is there a cost associated with it? The second part would be technology guarantees around the technology that you're using from the manufacturers. And the third is offtake. Who are your customers? Are your end products? What we have found with, say, biodigesters is, in fact, we get tipping fees to take certain kinds of materials to put in the digester. In some instances, that revenue stream is actually larger than the revenue stream associated with the production of electricity. So we can do both, but the thing about our learnings have been that you have co-products and other types of ways of looking at how you capitalize and operate the business than just looking for that power purchase agreement with, say, Portland General Electric.
right?
Because in long term, that may not be enough to make the business viable,
Okay.
the energy business viable. That's the problem a lot of people renewable energy projects we're having throughout the country right now. And so you really can't get the PPA that you need over 20 years, say, to really to pencil it out in terms of how you cover your debt.
Yeah, because I think there was some town back east that filed bankruptcy because of the whole trash to energy kind of thing.
That was incineration, and not to. I mean, that was really sort of the first panacea for major urban areas.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, you have no idea what you're burning.
Yeah,
So think about the kinds of pollution control that goes along with
yeah,
that.
that'd be bar.
And it's not efficient. That's the other end of it, because all you're doing is burning trash,
Yeah.
essentially, and producing some power.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to close this up, but I would make one suggestion that you might want to explore. It might be an idea to cultivate a conversation with the county. The photo you showed of the wastewater treatment plant, actually, can you scroll back to that?
Yeah,
Yeah, there we go. I just want to point out to you that the county owns the wastewater treatment plant, but this vacant land below it, that's all part of the same complex.
right, that's expansion
Yeah.
to the south.
I don't know how firm any county plans are for that site below it is, or whether their plans involve all the site or just a portion of it. But if some of that land might be surplus, that might be something to explore. For us, it'd be good because it's publicly owned. We don't tax it.
Right.
If it became part of private industry, that would be a benefit to the city. It's that empty part there is a closed landfill from the 50s and 60s. It's called the old Rossman landfill. But so it might be settling issues, et cetera. But from what you were saying, it seems to me that since your technologies are kind of like fleet of foot and light, I mean,
Yeah.
we're not going to have to drill any pilings or anything like that. If
No,
something settles,
If
so
in
be
fact
it. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if we did a biodiesel facility, the biggest issue would be soil underneath the tanks, the storage tanks. The rest of it is pretty much a concrete slab, and it's very, very straightforward, very easy.
County piece is 2 acres.
No, the total is about 13, but you could.
yeah. So I mean, that seems to me that for that site, that could be promising as far as general objectives for
Yeah,
both
we have,
us and
as I
for
say,
you.
we have maximum flexibility in terms of how we site and locate things. We just need egress and ingress to the site.
Good. Well, with that, I want to thank.
Was there any citizens that wanted to comment? Did anybody have any questions? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. We really appreciate it.
I thought since we had a large audience, that's what they think.
Okay, so why don't we move on to item 3B, infrastructure and asset management at Oregon City Public Works. The staff presenter is our Public Works Director, Nancy Kroshauer.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm going to invite John Lewis and Michael Pushke to come up. They're going to be providing a presentation. We've been, since about 2008, we've been purchasing piece by piece, software by software, the components of the asset management system that we have in place now. There's still some more pieces to buy, but we're implementing it in phases. And I wanted to thank David Knoll and Michael Pushke and John and Chris Dunlap as well, for really putting a lot of making some really good choices here on the programming and the software we purchased and how we've implemented it in stages. It's turning out to be a very, very helpful tool for Public Works. And we thought, since we have made tons of progress, these guys have done a super job, we thought it'd be really great to bring it to the City Commission to give you guys an update on what we're doing so that you could understand the progress we've been making with our asset management program. So, John, you want to give your presentation.
Well, thank you for having us tonight. We appreciate your time. We know it's short, and we appreciate your interest in this topic. It's an informal presentation, so we're not asking for any decisions. We've got about 15 slides to present, so we'll do our best to get through those fairly quickly. Nancy introduced Michael Pushke. We hired Michael in 2010, and he's got a great background in data management, and he's been quite an asset for our asset management system. So I saw this slide at a previous presentation. We modified it just a little bit, but I really liked it because I was just thinking, we have to do this. You folks have to do this. I envisioned David Fraser there as the balancing beam. When I saw this slide, I'm trying to balance what citizens want versus their willingness to pay. And asset management is the key, and I think it's become the industry standard that agencies are using to try and better figure out how best to spend the money, how best to allocate funds and resources. Police and fire have done an outstanding job with this in the past, with information about response times, how many tickets, what kind of crimes, they really have kind of led the way with this, and Public Works is coming around to those same kinds of tools and using those same kinds of things. So whether it be fiber optics, facilities, water, sewer, historic structures, there's lots of options for asset management. We're just showing you a small piece of that. Our focus is specifically on the wet utilities and streets, so our usual realm, if you will. Before I move off this slide, so we would just want to show you a glimpse of how we're using asset management and how we're using some of that to guide how we do the work that we do. We want to explain some of the tools and then just show you kind of where we're headed with some next steps. So that's where we're going. I really like this slide. Nancy's got the jug handle project, and now the Main Street 2A conversion. I thought we could bring in the asset life cycle to thrill you a little bit here.
I love it. Great job.
So I confiscated this slide as well from another presentation, but really it does show the life cycle of an asset. So if you look at the lower, I don't have a really pointer, but we start at the planning phase, strategic planning for an asset, and we find a way to fund that, usually find a way to construct that, and then eventually it gets turned over for maintenance. And so really what we want to talk to you a little bit about is that maintenance group, and where it really kind of gets a little more confusing. Trying to collect data, trying to report that data, trying to get more information about those assets, their age, their condition, figure out how we should allocate our resources in the right way. We are new to that. And our city has grown up enough to where it's not easy to juggle those anymore. It's not just institutional knowledge. We lose it the minute we lose somebody to retirement. And I've been here 8 years, and it's very clear to me that we need to do a better job of handling that data, and so that's what this asset management system is for us. The other place where we see this is as we start talking about master plan updates. We're looking at our sewer master plan update. This system will help us. It's fairly new. It's not that mature, but we'll use it to the best of our ability. But maybe in the next master plan update, we'll have even more data in the system that we'll be able to provide those people that are viewing that information, trying to make long-range plans about how we should utilize our utility systems. Insurance claims, that's another area where we've kind of gotten stung in the past, and we think having this kind of information will help us to hopefully not have those kinds of situations, but when we do, be able to tell a better story about what we have done. So we're definitely not the first ones to try implementing asset management. Many have tried, many have failed, especially agencies our size. We think we've done this the right way with slow implementation and some buy-in, which we think we have at your level. We're assuming we've got support there. I've seen it from Nancy and from the other department heads that have kind of looked at our acquisitions of this. So we've been buying software, so based on the budgeting that's been going forward, we're assuming that we've got buy-in there, and I think that's where it really needs to happen. A lot of agencies buy things and they sit in a cupboard and don't get used, and we're using this software. We're trying to do it in a way that's simplified for our crews so that they're able to use it in the field. It's not so complex. The technology's obviously gotten a lot better. I remember the times when you'd get these really dynamic databases that would be very powerful and you could collect a lot of data, and they tell you how to do a lot of things, but nobody could figure out how to really use them. So pulling that data out of the system or trying to implement it in the field was just too large a hurdle for those agencies to get over. So I think we're doing a great job with our asset management. This part of the deal was we got a huge start with the work that David Knoll and the whole GIS group has done. Those inventories of data through our mapping system have been what's kind of gotten us a foothold in asset management, because we've been able to take that data and convert it, turn it into a database that then we can use. We can write work orders against those assets. We can track histories against those assets. So I don't know if you realize, I think you do, the city's GIS program has been really a godsend in just how we do our day-to-day business, but also in this process as well. So like I said, the technology, it's more robust, it's more simplified, it's customizable. So some of the pieces we're going to show you are a couple products called Lucity and Marshall. That's kind of the foundation of what we're building upon. It's not just about software; it's obviously about process. But without those softwares, we wouldn't have that robust software. We wouldn't have those simple systems. So. The other little piece that we're finding fairly interesting is this citizen relation management system that the city's recently implemented. And again, David Knoll and that group has kind of led that. But we're liking that system as well, because it gives us good information pretty readily. Without a long conversation, we get to figure out what the problem is, get to develop a work request, determine if we need to do something about that, or if it's just a conversation that needs to happen in the end. And we're documenting that. If it's associated with an asset or a facility, we can kind of track that history. So, and the other thing we like about that is we get feedback that we typically have not gotten. Oftentimes, the feedback we get is kind of negative. But in this case, we're finding most of that feedback is surprised at our ability to respond and the timeliness in which we respond. So we like that. So Michael's going to take on this slide. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, as Nancy mentioned, I started at Public Works in April of 2010 as part-time software consultant, and I was brought on board to implement our asset management software that goes by the name of Lucity, as John mentioned. And by August of 2010, we'd completed the software configuration, the user guide documentation, and the crew training. And at this time, we began generating our first citizen requests and work orders. The software is implemented in modules that relate specifically to public work divisions by their asset type. We began initially with the sewer module that allows us to link citizen requests and work orders to sanitary division assets. In the following slide, you'll learn a little bit more about just what these assets are and the information that gets stored for them. Going down the timeline, in October 10, we rolled out the Lucity Water Division software module, so now we had the ability to link not only sanitary system work orders and citizen requests, but now we added the water division. Next milestone there, in November of 2010, we purchased and installed a software called GeoMarshall, our Marshall Geo Results mobile software. The associated documentation and training were accomplished for the product rollout that same month. Marshall Geo Results mobile software provides a graphical user interface on a mobile laptop that uses the Lucity product as its centralized database. We'll discuss this product in greater depth in an upcoming slide as well. Moving to July of this year, I was offered the full-time position of asset management specialist, and my responsibilities include maintaining and developing our asset management programs, processes, and procedures. I'm also an IT liaison for the folks at Public Works, which is kind of something, a bit of an advocate for them, something they haven't had before, so I think that's pretty helpful. I deploy asset management software to desktop and laptop devices. We have about 16 laptops available for mobile use in the field for our crews, and there's about 13 desktop computers over at Public Works that run one or more types of asset management software. And then finally, the last milestone on there, August this year, we acquired and installed the Lucity Street Division module. So we're in the process. The group leaders have been working with that, and we're in the process of now rolling out the Marshall Geo Results mobile software to that crew.
So, yes, we're talking about a database, but it's an incredible piece of software. Both of these are. The other thing, we've talked a lot about responsiveness, but we're also doing preventative maintenance work orders. So this year, OSHA has required quarterly inspections of all facilities. So we've allocated, we've assigned each of those facilities a quarterly work order that requires us to close that work order when we're done with it. We're also attaching some of the inspection data that we had with that particular facility to determine, was it safe or wasn't it? Does it need something? So we're documenting that as well. We don't have the stormwater module, which we'll talk about yet, but it has the potential. We've got the potential to add, regulatory compliance dates that we need to kind of, tend to forget from time to time. Not too often, but once in a while we lose track of some of those. Definitely with our drinking water program. Troubled line segments, we've heard of those from time to time where we've got line segments that are blocked, so we can highlight those as problem line segments that we need to deal with quarterly or annually or whatever the timeline might be. We listed the goals that we think this work touches on, as well as a bit of a subset to your goals, and so we thought maybe that was important information for you as well. So, what kinds of assets? We've got lots of stuff, and we know it's worth it's got lots of value to it.
Where is this, John?
Yeah.
This is actually on Mountain View Street. This is one of those. I think this is associated with the. Oh no! This one was up near South Fork Water Board.
Yeah.
So this was not on Hunter. This is on Swan, I think. Oh, you're right. It's on Hunter. I get those streets mixed up a little bit, but yeah. So this was recent work when they did some of the treatment plant upgrades. So we've got lots of stuff. If you remember that life cycle chart, we planned it, we financed it, we built it, and we do operate and maintain it. But some of the things that we sometimes struggle with are to tell you and others, tell ourselves sometimes, how much have we maintained it, how often have we maintained it, and how much does it cost us. So we think this is the key to getting us to that, to getting us in a situation where we can do a little better job with that. There's a little bit more on how we use the system. We track work performed on all of city assets. We can track personnel and the work they perform, equipment uses on the job, citizen requests, again, work orders. There's lots of things we can track on this system.
Yeah, so how are we using asset management at Public Works? The picture you see here is our water crew at their morning meeting. On the screen you see a projection of the Marshall Geo Results product. You'll see a close-up of this in an upcoming slide. Essentially, the software displays their daily work orders along with a map that shows the asset location. The water crew is the first division to use this technology and really went a long way to help us do an extensive background, or doing the initial shakedown to get it into production, as well as develop our procedures. although I've got an extensive background in information technology, I'm new to the workings of a public works. It's been a really fun experience, honestly, to get to learn about what it takes to maintain and install that infrastructure. You know, it's something that until I started working there, I pretty much took for granted what happens
you're
behind
right.
the fact of flushing your toilet and turning on the water. You know, it's always there. So
I think we all take that for granted at times.
yeah, so the crews have been extremely helpful to bring me along and spin me up, and it's been a lot of fun for me to get involved and learn about what they do. You know, they've been. I'm really excited at how well they've embraced this new technology and how enthusiastic they are about it. I think they really see a value for them to eliminate a lot of paperwork in the form of maps and notes by having these mobile devices at hand to take out into the field with them.
I would imagine they really appreciate it.
The slide you have here, again, we're talking about Lucity, which is our centralized database repository for this for the asset management software. It's kind of hard to give you a picture, but so I've got like a bit of a spreadsheet up here, but it's really the core product that stores the information that provides a facility to do reporting on just about any selection criteria with regards to assets. You know, if we decide, John decides that he wants to see every TV inspection that's been done that has a a critical rating of over 5. You know, there's a 1 to 5. 5's really bad. You know, I can produce that for him. Currently, our front office personnel take citizen calls via the phone as well as web-generated requests from our citizen relationship management software known as OC Request. These requests are entered into a Lucity work request, and then from these work requests, the division personnel create work orders according to the type of work that's needed. The work orders record the asset, the work performed, who did the work, what equipment was used, and then the work order gets linked to the citizen work request, and then an entry is recorded in the citizen database listing the citizen's name and contact information. So we also have history. We can go back and check on frequent flyers, and if maybe there's a problem, a lot of problems in a particular area. Lucity itself is a highly customizable and extremely feature-rich product. It has the ability to interface, for instance, with Eden Financial Systems. It has its own planning and project management components. There's modules available, as John mentioned, for stormwater, which we're interested in. Also electric, gas, trees and parks, solid waste, and other infrastructure components. At this early stage of our program, our primary focus is on building the history of work performed on our assets and determining their condition. And as John mentioned earlier, David and Chris and Jason have done a great job on our GIS side, which is really defines all of the assets that we use, and Lucity interfaces with this. What you're seeing right here is an example of a tool within Lucity that allows us to actually pull up a work order and present, a graphical explanation of that, which is, conveying information in a way that just a text document really can't. It's a little difficult to see on this slide, but this is a TV survey of a sewer inspection that was done up on 15th Street. And using this product, you can easily see what the problems and the condition of this pipe are. So that's just one of the features that are in the Lucity product. And finally, back to GeoResults Mobile. This is offered to us by the Marshall. Marshall is the name of the company, and GeoResults Mobile is the name of the tool. As I mentioned, you can get a closer look at the tool in this slide. The tool allows our crews to view the associated work with the location and asset displayed in the map on the right. On the left side of the window, you can see the work orders displayed. In the columns there, under work orders, it shows work order status, work order number, the category of the work, and the associated problem. Crews can actually click on that work order to get a more detailed look at the assigned tasks as a window opens up showing the details of the work order. Using the open work order window, they're able to record their hours spent on a task, enter who performed the work, any comments about that work or asset. And the product also has the ability to attach a very inexpensive GPS receiver that allows for precise location of assets in the field in order to make map additions, changes, or corrections.
All right. So here's a few of the payoffs that we're seeing. The other piece to this, I think, is that it's fun to watch the crews kind of adapt to this technology.
I was going to ask you, how is that going?
It's going relatively well. I mean, many of the people that we're asking to do these kinds of tasks, working on a computer isn't their favorite thing to do.
Right, right.
But with
Well, trust me, I can relate.
yeah, I mean, I really think Michael's brought that temperament that kind of helps them through that, and is always there and available to help them do that. But some of them just take into it. They also appreciate getting that, like I said, the feedback that we see, and that's not necessarily asset management, but seeing reports on how many work orders they've written or closed or those kind of things. We can produce that information for them and share it with them. And I think they have done a lot to I think they see the benefit in that, in the work that they're doing, and see it in a way that they've never seen it before. So, like I said, this is the first time we've really been able to take this much time to even talk to you about the work that we and that they do. So I think they're appreciative of that. And again, documentation of time, type of work orders. Michael produced me a nice tabbed detail on work orders. And we looks like year to date we've picked up 9 dead animals just in case you might be interested.
I love it.
Somehow I think we've gotten some more. So some of them might have slipped through the cracks, but we can give you that kind of information if you wanted to.
I think we have more out there.
Yeah. So anyway, it does have payoffs, and we know that we've still got a long ways to go, and so I'm going to talk through this one, and you can read along, but we still want to improve on work processes. We still know that there's a lot of that to happen. It feels a little clunky to us to, we got to figure out which work we're going to record. That's a whole other thing. What work is it meaningful to know how many dead animals you picked up? Probably not. So, when do we, but how far along do we get our crews to getting used to putting that information in before we say, you make the decision on what you put in and what you don't put in? So we want to refine our data collection records and capture meaningful information. We want to be able to improve on the way we report about our assets and our resources. We haven't done much of that. Again, police and fire are outstanding at that kind of stuff, and we want to get there.
Yes.
We do want to promote the use of mobile computing. They're a challenge, but it's less paper. It's so when it works right, it's really good in the field, especially if you get there at midnight and you need to know a lot more details about that work.
When it works right.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't work right, but we've got it pretty dialed in. We do want to purchase that Storm Division software because the same crew that's using the sanitary software, they interchange. There's one and the same, so they get a little frustrated when they need to put some data in about Storm and they don't have that module to use. That mobile citizen request, we've touched on that. Provide graphical map representation of asset conditions. That's coming along. That really has gotten better, but being able to report things like that, take a look at if we're doing a sewer basin analysis and we want to see where all the troubled pipes are at, trying to figure out how to do that a little more readily than having to, export a bunch of data and try to get it to the GIS guys so they can create a map for us. But we need to do a better job with interfacing Lucity and some of our sanitary inspection data. We've also got a TV van. We are probably going to be hiring a contractor to do more TV inspections. So how do we get that more seamless so it just dumps right into this system? We're working on that. Again, less paper is great, and demonstrate hard dollar savings. That's one of those things that's kind of hard to do in these, but hopefully we've convinced you that we're going in the right direction.
Thank Thank you.
and we'll open it up for questions.
I think you're going in the right direction. I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And you're right, I don't think about the flushing of the toilet. I just assume it's going to work.
Yeah, it's funny, when I first showed up, I saw something about catch basins, and I had to ask, what's a catch basin? I don't know what a catch basin is. Why do I need to worry about
You've been
leaves?
sweeping your debris down. there.
That's where you push all your leaves, right?
There you go.
Grass clippings.
I'm good with that. Why not?
Any questions?
Great.
From the commission?
I appreciate this.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
time.
Thank you.
Why don't we take 10 minutes and reconvene at 7:25?
Okie dokie.
How's that?
That automatically turns on the system, apparently. There's a button under there.
Okay. Take it away, Nancy.
Thanks. As you know, we've been looking for properties to build a future public works center, and I was asked to provide an update for you all tonight. I'm hoping that I received some direction from the Commission on next steps and expectations relative to the site selection process and schedule. And what I thought I'd just give a quick summary. At your June 7th, 2011 work session, we went through an exhaustive list of sites for future public works center. I think there were, close to 60 sites or something.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them totally unrealistic, in the floodplain,
Yeah.
on the college, stuff we wouldn't do. But at least we wanted to sort the city by size,
Right.
property size, to see what all is there. And by the end of that meeting, we had shortened the list to 10 sites by consensus. And since June 30th, then, we've been working with a real estate consultant to look more closely at those 10 sites and to determine if which ones are available, which ones might be easy to acquire and develop, and then potential acquisition costs. And then they've also been just keeping an eye out for any other sites that might come on the market that we may not have noticed before. So in summary, the status report that they provided when I met with them the other day was that some of the sites are not available or are only partially available. And if they're only partially available, they're probably not at the size we need, which is, we're looking 5 to 7 to 8 acres would be perfect. 5 to 10 acres would be great. Some of the sites we were looking at are really, really complex to develop, and those are ones that probably we might realistically want to eliminate them. Some of the sites are available, and of those, some of those then have some significant easement impediments. So we have to look at how much of the site is actually usable, and would that work for our operations and engineering groups. And then there were a couple that have asking prices that are a bit higher than the consultant recommends that we pay. So we want to carefully approach those and not, think about how would we negotiate those. And then one or more of the sites has property owners who've not been responsive to us, so we want to keep drilling down there and see if we can't get some response from them. So at this time, it doesn't look like the choice site has yet been identified, but the consultant is going to continue working with many of those properties. I think what we'd like to do is probably take a look at some tax reviews for the various properties to see what kind of impacts it would have on the city's general fund, the ones where they're not public properties today. And then I also took the time to go ahead and prepare a memo that lists some of the key tasks that we're going to have to undertake before we actually construct a facility. Because I think I want to make sure that there's a reality out there to the public and to the commission in terms of this probably can't happen in a day or a year. This is as much as I would like that to be, that would be great. But when we sat down and really looked at, and to some extent, I think this information, I would like you to think about it and use it in terms of when do you purchase, and do you purchase with a big fat option, or how does that really work when you may not be able to pass your bonds for several years or construct for several years, and there with quite a few. Well, like I said, there's quite a few steps to get through. So, in the best case, we could. Okay, so first you pick property selection, then property purchase is the big question mark. Do we purchase it now, or do we purchase it with options due to uncertainties? And the best case in that sense would be the site would be contingent, the purchase would be contingent on waterfront stability, bond approvals, and land use permits. And the worst case, given those 10 sites, well, a few more sites that we're looking at, you could even be contingent on annexation, bond approvals, and land use permits. The other thing that needs to happen is the City Commission needs to adopt the Water Master Plan, so that then we can go on and look at the finance plan for the water system and a rate scenario, and determine where that rate scenario falls relative to the charter requirements. And then the City Commission will determine the need and an approach to the city charter amendment should the rate rollback not provide sufficient funds for our water system, which it looks like it probably won't. It's kind of a no-brainer. But we have got to give you guys all the information you need to fully understand that. Then there would be the city charter amendment to stabilize the water fund and to assure that revenues are there to back future bond commitments. The other thing we need to do to qualify for bonding would be to review our other utilities to make sure there's adequate revenues there to back future bond commitments. And we may need to look at adapting the finance plans or adjusting the rates as necessary. At some point along the line, once we've selected the site, we need to do preliminary design and cost estimates, and because those are needed then to do any kind of bond requests. And it's all kind of wrapped. None of these are not necessarily in order. And then we would, based on the cost estimates, determine the bond requirements and the qualifications for lender approval. Then we need bond approvals for voters, by the voters. The bond approvals need to come from not only our voters but also the lender. And then at that point, then we could go ahead and get land use permits. The best case would be we'd be in the right zone, and we just need a site plan design review. Middle case would be a zone change and comprehensive plan amendment, and then the worst case would be an annexation with comp plan amendment and zone change.
Yeah, that'd be the worst case.
And then after that, final design, bid, contract award, and then we get to construct it. So the major milestones that I see are the charter amendment for water fund stabilization, preliminary design and cost estimates for budget planning, other utility fund reviews for bond commitments, bond approvals by the voters and the lender, and then the land use approvals. So that's mostly just to make sure there's a clear picture out there what it takes to do this kind of a project. And I guess in so doing, I'm also looking for some really strong advocates for whatever we end up, whichever one of these steps we're trying to take, whether it be making sure we have the adequate funding to qualify for bonds, to passing a charter amendment if needed, if the City Commission decides to do so. All of those things are going to need some really strong support from the Commission.
I think what Nancy's suggesting is like we have friends of the library, and we sort of need some friends of the Public Works.
Of the Public Works Department.
Right.
I love it.
It's not quite as glamorous. Yeah.
We can't beat that one, can we?
But it is going to take, we're all familiar with the stories of how easy it is for staff and even some elected officials to get apprehended by the word police for being too strong in advocating one of these ballot measures. So it's really important that there is some citizen group or some loosely collected group of supporters who want to try to achieve that, because they have the freedom to do that, where the staff has almost no freedom to do it, and the elected officials do have some flexibility. But
You want to watch your steps.
you want to watch your steps, because we'll make sure that you know where those pitfalls are. For employees, we don't know where they are, so we just assume we can't say word. That's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
But for you, there are some pretty clear things you can do, but there's also some pretty clear things you can't do. So.
Could I get a reminder what we said in our annual goals about the timeline for this?
It's a 2-year goal, I believe.
Yeah, I've got that right here.
Yeah.
I think it was, let's see. Decide where to build.
In 2 years. That was a 2-year goal?
So far, we decided where not to build. That's a step.
Well, we're making progress then.
Yeah.
And then we're supposed to commence water rate rollback discussions as well. This calls out for election in May 2012. I don't think we probably won't be ready for that. Yep. So so here's my question or point of discussion is: at which point do you purchase a property along this line? I mean,
Well, I have a question on that
Yes. Real
as far
estate
as,
is always worth
and
something.
maybe this is where the city attorney comes into the discussion. We've gotten an opinion from the city attorney that it's necessary to to do this public works site and the library. We're going to have to go to the voters for a bond.
Yes.
Okay. Does that also does the property purchase by itself have to be part of that bond issuance, or does the property purchase, can that happen and then the bond could happen later when we actually go for constructing the
You
facility?
can purchase the property with funds without borrowing, without issuing any bonds. You don't have to go to the voters. So, that becomes a financial question for the city. Do we have the money? If you do, then that's straightforward.
And really, that goes even to the facility. So if you can purchase and/or build, and I think that may have been what drove former commissions to pick the site that they were at, because they figured we don't have to go out for a bond measure to build on that site, as long as we build a small-scale change and we do it there. So it does raise a very good question, though, whether to incorporate into the bond the actual some forecasted property purchase, because that the range of cost that we've looked at for that site, is anywhere from, well, I'm not going to use a figure, but that's a very big piece of the construction cost for the overall site. And some cities, like when I was in Grants Pass, we watched the county build a new jail, for example, but they did not include in there the staffing cost, training cost, equipment cost. So we had a big box with lots of bars.
Yep.
And very little way to have occupants inside there. So there wasn't a turnkey, and then it unfortunately for the county commission, it looked like a boondoggle. It looked like a poorly planned thing, and they
that
didn't
was
deliver.
the fire station up on South End Road
They
for us.
gave a perception that this jail was going to be constructed and it was going to house additional people, because they were turning people away for everything. And so when we did our new public safety facilities there, the city, we learned from that mistake, and we made sure that our new police and fire facilities were fully equipped, everything from washer, dryers, turnouts. There were 2 new pumper trucks involved, and I think a half a dozen squad cars, and all the attendant equipment that it took to turn the key and make that thing operate. Even the electronics, every insurance, site acquisition and development cost, SDCs, every single thing that you could put into the package, so that the public knew when we say yes to this, it's going to work, and it's going to work right.
Right.
And so my suggestion would be that unless you have the cash to buy the site, that all of those other tenant costs be part of that ballot measure, because you want to be able to deliver. That's really important when people are convinced to say yes, you want to hit it out of the park on the service that they get. So then, and in our case, we were able to come in $600,000 under budget, and we actually sent them money back on their taxes, which was fun for me, because people told me my whole career that government spends every penny it gets and never gives it back. So when we did give it back, we stunned people but we also found that we had more credibility in the future when we said we need money for X. People believed us, and it was then the subsequent ballot measure passed by a 68% margin in a county not known for passing ballot measures. So you can get credibility; it just takes time.
Absolutely.
And I think on this one, or actually any of the ballot measures, including the library, you want to have that full analysis and then tell the public the absolute transparent truth about what they're going to get and what it's going to cost and how it's going to work. So.
Another thought I have that just trying to be sensitive to how people will react, but whether or not we purchased a property and then we go like for our water rate charter amendment, how does that feel to a citizen? I don't know. I haven't been in that position where I had to select or think about that before.
That's not so much a legal question as a political question,
Right.
but that's something that you need to be aware of. How many times you're going to hit them.
How is the water rate rollback going? Not to get off subject, but
We're finishing the master plan. That has got to be done, and then we're going to have there's alternatives, which is just a starting point for discussion of the finance plan the commission wants to adopt for the water system. But the water master plan itself will have several options. It has the one where we roll it back all the way. It has the one where we roll it back with the 3% increases. Both of those have just a slight difference in the 3%. One is we keep it the same, and then one is one that what you really would need to have a sustainable water system for the next 20 years, and that's doing regular pipe replacements. It's and that would require more money. Okay.
So is that then coming back to the commission?
Yes.
And what is the
So what I'm hoping that can happen is we adopt a master plan that has various scenarios, and then, or the commission can at that point adopt the master plan with a selected scenario.
Right.
And it's up to you. You can adopt the plan and then talk about the funding scenarios and pick one for the water rate discussion, which is kind of why I think that might be a good thing, because then you could really get the master plan adopted, so you have some document that states these are your needs, this is your basic CIP, this is what the recommendations are, and then there's still the discretion of the community and the commission to decide how you really want to fund it. And then we could go out and have a lot of community conversations about, I think there's going to need to be community conversations about what level of service does this community want, and that then should help to guide the commission in selecting a rate that we want to move
what is
forward
the
with.
time frame for that then? Do you have?
I would say, the water master plan right now, we're doing more public outreach to hopefully just get the word out more and make sure everyone feels comfortable about the community involvement to the point of adopting it.
Right.
And then it's going to probably come to you guys for public hearings the second part of January.
Okay.
Depending on how much time you need with it, adopt it February. And then right after that, then we start looking at the actual, what you really want to adopt for a rate, a funding strategy or finance plan. And that could go through the spring.
But I think the larger question is, what is the relationship between a ballot measure for a public works facility versus the ballot measure for the rollback, the charter rollback?
Where does the property purchase fit in with all that?
Right,
too?
and that most critical element of that, the emergency that I see coming is that the rollback kind of has to be the number
first.
one. Yeah, that has to be the number one priority, because the consequences would be so devastating to the system without it.
Right. So we would want that to go before the facility, correct?
If we had assurance that we could sell the property back in case we need the money, if for some reason our water fund is has some big burps in it with the water rate rollback, that would be helpful. Sometimes real estate is easy to turn and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Or do we want to run it parallel? I don't know. What do you guys think? Because you could put both out there at the same time. I
Well,
don't
that's a
know
real
how
political
well they would
question,
like it.
but if you're, you folks know your voters better than any of us. But if you're a voter and you get this ballot that has these two measures on it,
Yes.
you're going to say, well, why do they need to roll back their water rates? Why don't they just not build this, quote, Taj
Right.
Mahal? And I've seen all kinds of things called the Taj Mahal. That I mean, I've seen Quonset huts called that in certain parts of the country. So, you don't want to have any competition for the one that's the most important to you. And it almost feels like that fire annexation pledge, we're sort of, our options are very limited until we fix this problem. And it could also be a very good training exercise for how to pass other ballot measures, because most of you probably haven't actually been personally involved in doing one of those. So this could be a really good experience. And getting neighborhood associations involved,
Sure.
getting CIC involved in some way, as long as they're not using public resources.
Exactly.
That kind of network or database of communication efforts that could be done in the private sector could really be helpful to you in any of your bond measures in the future.
So I would say that you would want to work on the rollback first and kind of get that started before we go with the facility. I don't know if that helps you, maybe.
One good thing is none of the sites we're looking at are active in terms of, there's not a lot of
Activity going
pressure.
on? Yeah.
Several of them have been sitting there for a while, and one of them, we're not certain what the owner wants to do. And so, I
guess-
think it's important to keep working on that.
Yeah.
And maybe if something is like all of a sudden a big emergency, that's when a decision is made more.
Yeah. Maybe that bumps the
We
priority
keep getting
in
more
some ways.
information, and
Yeah, sometimes opportunities drive that
Yes.
if something comes available.
So is that kind of helpful for you, or do you need something else from us?
well, any other comments from the other commissioners?
Sort of chicken and the egg, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Because you want both.
Yeah, well,
At the
thank
end
you.
of the day.
Yep, so that's my update, and
you.
we'll continue if things are happening. You will be seeing all the water stuff coming before you,
Oh,
and
great.
then I'll as things evolve with any of these sites, I'll make sure you're updated too.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for the update, Nancy. Okay, we move along to item 3D, City Charter Amendment Process. Our staff presenter for this item is our City Recorder, Nancy Ide.
And I'm going to pass it on to our city attorney, Bill Kabeisman, who will explain the memo and his comments regarding that.
Thanks, and that's actually a good time to have this discussion right after the discussion. on
Yeah,
water rates
I think you're right.
and other things. And that really gets to one of the key things for you and most of the presentations tonight has been, here's information to you, do you have any feedback? This, we're really looking for your feedback about what to do in terms of what we want to do on this. I got this from Nancy as we were talking about, because I was curious what I hadn't looked at in a while in terms of the city charter. You've got Goal 6 and 2011-2012 milestone of develop detailed statement of charge, expectations, and required resources for commission consideration within a 2-year time frame. But we also have the bond measure expiration that's
Yes.
going to deal with that. So with that, I guess the critical question, I'm going to talk about a critical question and then go through what we've got. The critical question for you is in terms of charter, how expansive do you want to make the charter review? Do you want to do a bottom-up complete rewrite or target specific things? There have been a number of discussions over the years that I've been here about specific things. Water rates, obviously. The parks provision, there are some clarifications in there that can make life simpler moving forward. There's been discussion of a city attorney as in the charter. There have been other things that have sort of bubbled up and or not. And so, the first question for you is, do we want to do a quick deal with these two issues and that's it, or the bottom-up rewrite? You have a memo that we wrote a while ago, about a little over a year, about process, and there really wasn't much detail about the process. What it did was talk about the city of Ashland and sort of give a little bit of the flavor of their experience when they did a pretty full charter rewrite. And that's because there's not too much in the way of requirements legally for a charter amendment. The critical thing is that any new charter has to be approved by the voters.
Right.
And get there a variety of different ways. This is obviously a city commission initiated, so you can do it. But I think one of the key pieces is how much public involvement you want in it too, and certainly the more you attack, the more you want to look at, the more process you're probably going to need, and the more people you get involved. Even a small amendment, depending on what it is going to require a lot of work to get that passage, depending on what it does. But the process, how much involvement do you want? How far down? The memo the Ashland went through a year or so. There was significant opposition from some folks, but they did a pretty good job of getting into the community.
Did it pass when it went to the voters?
I believe it did.
Yeah, it did.
I was thinking about that right when you asked that question. I was like, I think it passed.
With all the citizen involvement, and it took like a year and a half, I think, or something.
No, it failed. Ashland City Council adopted a resolution to submit the charter amendments to the voters and provided the necessary explanatory ballot statement. However, the City Council did not actively support voter adoption of the referral, and it failed. So there's a lot of effort put into it at the outset, but for whatever reason, it didn't fail. And so that's part of the process. Also, the more you send it out and the deeper it goes, the less control you have of what comes back up too, and that can play into things as well. So with that sort of background, this is, like I said, this is one where we're looking for direction from you. One final piece. The more process you put into it, the more cost it is as well. You're probably going to have city staffing this to make it come up, and the more meetings, more process, the more costs.
During the budgeting this spring, did we budget for this process?
I think there are some dollars in there for it, but I think it's I can't tell you how many dollars there are in there right now, but I know there's some. One comment I might make about this, and this might apply to Ashland, but it certainly applies to other cities in the country that have gone through charters, and right now Tulsa, Oklahoma is going through a big row about whether to have a city manager or a strong mayor, and that's all over the place. But generally, when you look at amending charters or changing your charter, the more you do, not only is it the more cost, but it gives rise to more opportunity for somebody to not like something that's in there. And so, if you look at the U.S. Constitution, the number of times it's been amended in a couple hundred years, it's a fairly limited. You have better chance of succeeding if you narrowly tailor what the problems are. And your charter has a handful of things that are sort of irregularities and some other things. Somebody used the word outdated. Well, all these documents are dated.
Right.
I mean, you have a young charter compared to the Constitution, so you don't want to look at the date of it. You just want to look as what's operating well, what's not operating well, what really needs to be fixed. And some of them, I would submit, are probably some of the citizen initiative things that made sense maybe when they adopted them, but now they don't seem to apply anymore.
Dog compression chambers?
I mean, we had one in Ashland that no cows on the street after 10 o'clock. It's not a big deal anymore. It doesn't apply. But so I just think if you want to be successful with that, you'd be better off trying to narrowly tailor what it is, the problem that you're trying to fix, and go with that than just open it up.
I know that there's grammar issues, like we do have females that could be mayor. I mean, does that have to go before the voters? I mean, it's...
If you want to change the language, yes, but the reality is that, we've had female mayors,
Yes.
so it's not limiting in the way you might think.
Absolutely not. But that was just, one thing that just popped out.
Yeah, if we were doing it from scratch again, the language would be different.
Okay, so...
I think that the point David made is a good one. What's working, what isn't, you know,
Yes.
and fixing that. Yeah, it'd be great, but you know, do you want to open up all of a sudden the idea of mayors to change that language? Are there other changes somebody else is going to suggest? And well, you didn't fix this, so you know, it's and
Right, it could be a real big mess, but I just wondered if we had to take that before the voters, if we changed the grammar.
yes,
Really, anytime you start changing roles and responsibilities,
Okay.
grammatical things probably aren't going to draw a lot of fire, but when you start changing roles and responsibilities, then for even positions where the person occupying the role doesn't even have an opinion.
Right.
Like, for example, the city attorney probably isn't going to have an opinion on the roles and responsibilities. Anytime you start changing those, that's when you see potential for controversy. So pick the ones, if there are any of those, that you really need to change. It seems like most of the things you might want to change are these things that affect how the city can govern and operate. Things
Right.
like for example, voter-approved annexation may not be something you want to take on, but that is a very unusual thing for a city to have. It's not. It's good in some ways, but it's unusual. There's other things like this water rate rollback, though, that literally hamstring your ability to manage the community. So you have to.
Yeah.
If you have those sorts of things and you can narrow that down, those are the items that you probably want to focus on.
I don't know, because there are pieces that do need to be changed and looked at.
You can also do sort of an exploratory review where some of the commissioners and maybe the city attorney and I can, we can have a study group and go through the charter and see if you.
Oh, that would be good.
If
I'd
you
like to see
identify
that.
a handful, okay, these are the red buttons that are problems.
Can I be on that committee?
You can all do it. I mean, we can do it in a series of work sessions.
I think that might
think
be a good
that's
idea.
that's a terrific idea.
I think that's
like
a
that
good
'cause,
idea.
I mean, when I looked at my interest in looking at the charter, I had
Yeah.
some very specific things in mind.
Yeah. So that's a good idea. Can we do it like after the first of the year? Is that like
You're going to have to because your calendar is pretty well full.
Okay, that works then. Okay.
Good. Okay, I think we've gotten some direction on that matter. That's good.
Nancy, do you have that then? We can start trying to find work sessions after January.
Yes.
Okay.
And David Wimmer just indicated that there are some dollars in service contracts budget that about $50,000 that can be used toward that.
Oh, great.
That was budgeted for this year, but
Thanks for finding the money, David. Can you find some from my purse?
he's reaching in his
Change,
pocket right
got
now.
some more change there.
I have some bills that you could pay if you could find the money for that.
Okay, then. Last item under discussion items is 3E, and that is the City Commission meeting schedule for 2012. And our presenter from staff on that matter is our city recorder, Nancy Ide. And I don't think she's going to give that one to the city attorney.
I don't think so. Sorry, Bill. But I did want to present the draft schedule for 2012 to you. It's, of course, Monday, the first and third Wednesdays of every month, our city commission meetings, and then the Tuesday in between those two meetings each month is the scheduled work session. I did want to point out a couple of oddities. The July 4th holiday is on a Wednesday this year, and so we moved it to July 5th because that's the charter directive. And then November 21st is a regularly scheduled meeting, but it's also the day before Thanksgiving, the evening, it's Thanksgiving Eve, and I don't know if you want to, we can go ahead and schedule it for that now and then talk about it as it gets closer
I was
or
gonna
what
say.
you want to do.
Yeah.
It probably depends upon what the hot topic is, if there's anything going on.
Or we could cancel as we get closer to that, or, we can just discuss it at that time, unless you have another option for that. But otherwise, we have included the budget meetings for April for both City Commission and Urban Renewal, and the Metro Enhancement Committee meeting, and the OCCIT is also included on this draft schedule. So unless you have any, if there's something in your personal life where you can't be there, and there's several of you that cannot on any one day, we can make some changes. But otherwise, we'll move forward on these dates.
I appreciate getting
fine.
that information out
We
quickly
can
to me.
schedule rooms and do all
Yes.
those good things.
Yeah.
That. Okay, we'll
Yeah,
move
looks
forward
good.
on it then.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Item number 4, City Manager's Report.
Thank you. This is probably a good segue into the discussion about this December 21st meeting that's coming up, which we emailed you about, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago. We've heard from the mayor and one other commissioner that they are okay with canceling the December 21st meeting, but we haven't heard from everyone. So we wanted to check and see. It takes some council directive for us to change that calendar. So
I don't know if I responded, but yes, I'm in favor of
anyone opposed to changing the December 21st date?
No.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that then. Also, some reminders here. There's the Safeway ribbon cutting for the new Safeway store is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And then next week, the Sportcraft boat ramp ribbon cutting is November 14th at 11 a.m. Is that right? And also, downtown two-way traffic. I can't repeat that enough. That's coming. And I was pressing Nancy because it's like totally dependent on the contractor and the weather, which are very hard to. Well, it's almost as hard to predict
There's not
one
a
as the
fixed
other.
date for that. It depends.
No, but I have.
surprise.
I've been pressing this because as much as we've advertised it, I still believe we need. If we have to give 24 hours notice for a meeting, there's got to be a way for us to give a day's notice on this. And so I've been pressing Nancy, who's been pressing the contractor, to say, we need a day. At least a day. We need to know the day before so that when people leave in the morning to go to work, they know
They know.
what's
And
coming.
to make sure cars are actually parking parallel because they
Right.
still are parking straight
Right.
in.
I also wanted to mention that Funnelbox Video did
Yes.
did that video that's on our website. Have any of you
Yeah.
clicked on that and seen that little bars light up in
You
green?
know, I haven't. I'll have
It's
to
good.
do that.
It's really pretty neat.
Oh,
The
good.
car is going really fast, though. If you actually look at the scale, that thing's
Was I driving?
it's like a Pac-Man on steroids, the way it just goes around. So, but it's very effective, I think, in letting people feel what and giving people an idea. Well, where can I park now? And some folks have even suggested that, well, I don't see the little L-shaped markers of striping the way I'm used to seeing it in Portland. And there's an actual reason behind why we didn't put that in, because we found that, and I'm going to credit lawyers because I think they actually have something to do with the size of these spaces that are required by the manual. So if we stripe those, we actually end up losing like a half a dozen or more spaces in the downtown rather than leaving people to fit their cars into their own spaces.
Our
So we
federal regulation's great.
yeah, so we
Yeah.
didn't stripe it intentionally so that people would have the flexibility. There are places that are striped and there are places that aren't. But those that aren't striped weren't because we forgot. It's because we wanted to let people be creative and try to use only the space they need. But if you go by the manual, it's the 110 dually space, and not everybody has one of those. So, yeah.
This is kind of just to refresh my memory, but is there another? When I was watching the video, I seem to recall there must be another step. I think when the bridge opens, correct? And that video only pertains to right now
Correct.
until the bridge, because
That's
I
correct.
think I remember the discussion as traffic comes out off the bridge that it'll actually be two-way traffic in front of the elevator.
Right.
I mean, cars would go straight to the elevator and back around
Right.
6th Street as opposed to what's happening now. But that's another step once the bridge opens, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's a whole
And we,
other...
at the time, I think we hadn't even concluded the discussions
Right.
with ODOT on whether we could make
That
a
was
left
gonna
turn off
work.
the bridge because our Public Works Department was trying to encourage that, and ODOT was
Right.
not
Okay.
amenable to it.
And I want to encourage all of the buses and the trucks to stay off of the bridge when it opens.
Yeah, that'll work.
So one other thing I want to mention is all of you know that Mr. Wemmer has announced that he'll be retiring and leaving our
Yes.
service. And he's graciously agreed to stick around as in a consultant capacity, so he's got his own systems here, and we're going to be changing. There's going to be a lot of changes in his department at some point after, right about the time he leaves. So we're glad that Dave is is willing to stick around and assist any way we can. But I'm inclined to use a national recruiter for this particular position for a couple of different reasons. We have a HR department of 2.
Yes.
And they're really busy right now with a number of, there's some union issues, there's also some recruitments happening and for lower level positions. And the nature of the position, I think, requires it's prudent to have the vetting done at the front end. If you think about the process we just used for the HR or for the economic development manager, and I think the department did a fantastic job with the resources that they had in delivering good clients or good candidates. The background check and the vetting process, there was a series of things that happened. Some of those were phone interviews that occurred as we were trying to winnow that list of 70-some people down to a manageable figure. But the actual vetting of checking all the references and all the other details that you would past employers, all that started to happen as we got down to the final couple of candidates. And when it comes to finance, because of the level of responsibility for public money, I'm just much more comfortable hiring a professional consulting firm that has adequate staff to do all that up front before we ever see the candidate, so that they are completely and fully vetted. One of the firms, I'll give you an example of how thorough they can be. We've gotten now 3 proposals from 3 different firms, and they range in price from $19,500 all the way up to $29,000 or so. I generally pick the cheapest one that does the best work. Well, one of the firms that submitted a proposal to us was the least expensive firm. And a few years ago, I was in a search. They tried to recruit me to be a city manager in Coral Gables, Florida. And they called, you submit 5 references. Then the firm calls your 5 references and asks them for 3 more that you don't even know about. They call those 3 and ask for 2 more that they don't know about. And by the time they're done vetting you, people are calling you that you haven't talked to in 10 years saying, I got a call about you the other day and they talked to me for 30 minutes. And I mean, that sounds like overkill, but and it probably is for this position. But I still want that kind of scrutiny and to be as careful as we possibly can when we make an appointment to a financial, because this position hasn't been open for many, many years.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, I think, in many ways. I think it speaks to stability. I think it'll help us attract better, stronger candidates. But I think if you actually totaled up the hours and benefits that we pay and what we would encounter in trying to do the search ourselves, we'd probably spend at least as much. And I think we would have a less thorough process at the end.
Right.
So I just want to give you a heads up that I'm inclined to do that. We have money in the budget for it. But I wanted you to be aware. Also, the same sort of philosophy that we brought to the economic development recruitment, we're going to try to use that same kind of inclusive formula for this department head position as well. So there'd be some sort of public event and there'd be some panel interviews. Unless I hear lots of feedback that people didn't like that, but everything I've heard has been very positive about the process we used for
I've heard it's been very positive.
Yeah. And I hopefully you enjoyed the role that you played in it as well. I appreciate that. And then I'm going to close with good news. This is a little bit of an early Christmas present. But we're going to be proposing a change to the way we calculate our PGE franchise fees. And when Blue Heron was here, they were the single largest power customer in the city. Mm-hmm. And there were some financial reasons for the city to collect its franchise fees based on volume, what they call a volumetric calculation. And the Oregon Senate, the state of Oregon passed a statute that allows cities to kind of choose whether they want a volumetric calculation or a gross revenue calculation. And there was a little window of opportunity that PGE kind of has control over of when the city can change its calculation. That window expired in end of October, but PGE met with Dave here recently and said they're willing to extend that window further for us to change our calculation from volumetric to gross revenues. If we do that and we do it in an emergency ordinance, and the reason I'm talking to you about this tonight is I know how much you don't like emergencies. But there's some really good reasons to do that in this case because it's over $300,000 in revenue to the city. And since we just found out about it at the end of October, it's kind of hard to get it in front of you in the ordinary 2 or 3 month process that we would use for an ordinance. So we'll have a staff report coming out on that explains it in greater detail. But it's almost $340,000 a year in additional revenue for the city just by changing the calculation. It has no effect on rates that our residents pay, and so this is one of those no-brainers that comes along every once in a while.
Good. We like money.
Yeah, well, it's a big help because you do have expenses there, and actually, part of that money we're looking at part of that to help with Ermatinger, which is something that we're still trying to get there, but that's a very big mountain in front of us. Even though it's a small house, but it's a big hill. So that's all I have for my reports, unless one of the staff have anything. We're good. Okay.
Commissioner Smith.
I know we don't normally do announcements or reports on work sessions, but I just want to make one comment for today at Oregon City High School. We had a great event. Veterans Assembly today at the high school involved a huge portion of the community, including the police and fire department. But I wanted to say and wish good luck to the band of Oregon City High School and the JROTC, they landed in New York sometime this evening, and will be in the New York Veterans Day Parade and performing at Ground Zero, which is huge. And so we're very excited for them, and they'll be representing our school and our city and our state. So it's pretty good, and I wish them luck.
Yeah, that's great.
Terrific. Okay, with that, if there's nothing else, I think we can call ourselves adjourned.